The Fire Emblem series of games are always quite similar. You attack opponents standing in your way and probably save the world. And if you read the title, you already know that today we'll be answering the question, can you beat Fire Emblem Fates without attacking? The rules for this are simple. You cannot press the attack button, that is it. So as long as we don't press attack or walk up to the opponent and attack them, we can complete this challenge. And if our opponents initiate an attack on us, we're okay to attack and defeat them out of self-defense just as long as we do not initiate the attack. Now our first question would be, which of these 3 games should we play on? Birthright lets us grind XP and Conquest is just really difficult. Revelation has a rough start also, so I don't even think we'd be able to get past the first couple of chapters. This means that Birthright will be our game of choice to play on. So with all that out of the way, we can begin the game. We start out in the character creation screen, where we pick our name that I asked you guys for on Twitter, and I decided to go with Bingle. We have an option to give Bingle a skill that she'll be good at, and in this case, we'll be using Strength. And we also have an option to give her a skill that she wouldn't be good at, and we chose Luck for that one. Prologue. Ties that bind. This chapter of the game shows us the basics of combat and how to win battles. However, we can just walk out of the way and continue to the next chapter. Chapter 1. Nor. This chapter reveals a stopping point. Already! Xander tells us to attack him, and personally, I wouldn't, but like, 1, 2, 3 in Fire Emblem Fates is not possible to beat without attacking. Or is it? At the safe selection screen, you can see a Branch of Fate option grayed out. What does this button do, you may ask? Well, it brings us to chapter 6, where we can choose our side that we want to be on. And as you may know, we're on chapter 1, so this means that if we can unlock this option, we can skip these 3 hits and continue on with the game. Now keep in mind, it'll have our saved data of our character and the difficulty of the file that we were most recently using. But technically, we would have never hit Xander those 3 times. This is known as New Game Plus, where you can start a save file in a game, but you keep your EXP and items from another save file. You could also just delete all of your save files and this option would still be available. Anyways, how do we even unlock this option? Well, if you go through the first 5 chapters as normal, we can make it to chapter 6, which unlocks this button the second you see the chapter screen. And for the record, chapters 2 through 5 are possible to beat without attacking, but they're pretty difficult since we can't really grind for XP yet, can we? Chapter 6, the path is yours. This chapter will give us 3 options to choose from: defend Hoshido, fight with Nor, or refuse to choose a side. Now, since we chose to play on Fire Emblem Fates Birthright, we're going to be choosing to defend Hoshido. When we pick this option, we immediately get the fight on the battlefield, with the task of defeating the boss. In this battle, we have to fight against Camilla, Leo, Elise, and Xander. Believe it or not, this battle is the first one to include a healer into the battle. And since there is a healer, we should probably defeat Xander before he can get healed. Thankfully, he doesn't really get healed much since Elise is pretty low leveled. However, it didn't really matter since Ryoma was strong enough to take him out with the help of Bingle's stat boosts when paired up. After this chapter, we get introduced to Scouting, which allows us to battle opponents from maps that we've already played on. It costs money to scout, but the rewards definitely outweigh the loss. You can gain items, XP, and money from scouting, so as long as you're strong enough to take out the opponents, you'll be perfectly fine to just grind for XP and become rich. Chapter 7, A Vow Upheld. So this is our first real battle after the tutorial, and they make us fight against archers who can shoot from 2 spaces away. This is a problem since we're not allowed to attack them, but we're also not even able to reach them when they attack. This is the start of our attack setup, where we try to get everyone to have ranged weapons so they can have a fighting chance against these archers and ninjas. And since Jacob and Kaze are our only units that can get hit from 2 spaces away and fight back, we would have to move them to the front entrances so they would be able to attack without needing to worry about any other people getting attacked with the archers while being out of reach. This thankfully wasn't too difficult since we prepared beforehand by making Kaze level 10. Oh yeah, and also, don't forget to subscribe if you like these kinds of videos, because we sometimes do gameplays and we sometimes break games to their absolute limit. Just like how we saw if we can beat New Super Mario Bros. Without pressing right, which you should probably watch after this video, by the way. Prologue 1, Tragic Start. I decided that we should start preparing our units so we would be set for future chapters. So I thought that Mozu would be a good unit since she had the skill Aptitude, which boosts growth rates by 10% when leveling up. This is good because Mozu could very well be our strongest unit by the end of this challenge. Anyways, the entire battlefield is filled with faceless enemies, and this means that literally anyone on our team could help since the faceless can't attack more than one space away. But Mozu is kind of too weak to fight against these enemies for now, so we'll have to grind some XP to make her stronger after everyone else is done battling the faceless, which wasn't too difficult. Chapter 8, Fierce Winds. This chapter takes us to the Wind Tribe and shows us some terrain effects that make some of our units slower than usual. This chapter also gives us units that we cannot control. These allies will move and attack on their own, and if we talk to them, they'll join our team and we'll be able to control them. This chapter also includes healers on the other team, and they cannot attack us since they don't carry weapons. This is where our uncontrollable allies come in. We get Hinoka and Setsuna to help us during this battle, so my plan was to have them attack for us so we wouldn't have to attack. But this strategy comes with one problem. These allies do not attack during the phase where they're supposed to. For the people asking if they attack in lunatic mode, they still don't. Trust me, I've tried everything. Before I give up, I think I should probably give this chapter a chance by seeing if something miraculously changes to have these healers defeated. So after we took out every enemy that was able to attack, there was just these two healers that were just kind of there, not able to do anything since their staves broke. So this means that we have to attack them twice. And this also means that you cannot beat Fire Emblem Fates without attacking. Kind of. When you're in the castle, you can use this crystal ball to visit other players' castles. And in some of these, you might find an Einerjar shop. I'm just going to call it a card shop, where you can buy allies from other people's battle team. And I scouted around and checked every skill to see if there's a skill that could possibly deal damage to healers without attacking. And I found something that was kind of in a gray area. Lunge is a skill that gives you an option under the attack button that allows you to deal damage and switch your spot with the enemy that you dealt damage to. So technically, you do an attack, but it's not an attack button. So I think this would go into its own category, since it is an attacking move, but you don't need to press attack to use it. It's an attack, but I just don't want to say it is. Anyways, when you buy a card from someone's shop, you can get the skills that the unit also had. So I visited my castle and claimed her in my card shop. This chapter uses 2 lunges to complete, and I'll try to use lunge as little times as possible. Chapter 9, Land of Gods. Before I start this chapter, I kind of want to point out that I think it's kind of funny that it says Bingle and Co. in the description. Anyways, this chapter introduces us to Oboro and Hinata, and we're never going to use them again after this chapter, so I don't really think there's a need to mention them, but I did. This chapter takes place in the kingdom of Izumo, where we fight our opponents inside this building. My strategy for this was to barricade the left side of the map with our ranged weaponed units, so the Pegasus Knight units wouldn't die from the archers. After that, we got Oboro and Hinata as our own units, and I moved all of our other units upwards so we could advance on our main enemy, Zola. I also let Sakura heal our units a lot so she could level up her weapon proficiency, which we're gonna definitely need to use a bit later. We took out all the enemies in our way until Zola was the only enemy left. But the challenge in this stage was not over yet. Zola started taking out all of our other units, and he wouldn't stop healing from this healing spot. And then I got a brilliant idea. Let's give Sakura Enfeeble, an item that lowers every stat by 4 on our selected target, and since she has weapon proficiency C now, she can use the staff that we just gave her. Now that Zola's stats have been lowered, his attacks will do less damage and we can finish this chapter because he's much weaker now. Chapter 10, Ninja Village. Before I started this chapter, I decided to use our first Master Seal on Sakura so she could defend herself and heal everyone on the team. But now she is also the strongest ally on our team. Anyways, in this chapter we're forced to battle so many ninjas. And these guys have shurikens that can hit us from 1 to 2 tiles away. This starts part 2 of our strategy, where we get every unit that we have that can hit 1 to 2 tiles away with one weapon in the front. This will give us Kaze, Bingle, Jacob, Sakura, and Silas to be our attackers for this chapter. We are also provided with some spikes on the ground that will hurt anyone that touches them, and since there are 2 healers in this battle, we can easily beat them with these spikes, or at least you would think they would. Unfortunately, these spikes leave our opponents at 1 HP, so we're going to have to use lunge 2 more times to beat this chapter. Chapter 11, To the Sea. This chapter takes place on a boat with a lot of Pegasus and Wyvern units. My strategy was to use the Dragon Veins to stop some of the flyers with, so my units on the left could be safer. But since a lot of the enemies could only hit from 1 tile away, we can clear this chapter pretty easily. Chapter 12, Dark Reunion. This chapter is insanely easy. Our task is to have Bingle escape with this tile, but we have water surrounding us and we cannot walk over it. But by the help of our flying units, this battle could be completed in like 3 turns. This is probably one of the easiest chapters in this challenge, since you don't even have to interact with anyone. Chapter 13, Another Hope. This chapter takes place in Chive, where these villagers are hiding. There are a lot of Dragon Veins here, and they do an insane amount of damage. Now, they do deal damage, but I still use them anyways since it's more of a map effect, I would say, than an attack. Just like how half of these spikes from the ninja village weren't formed because of my units, but they still did damage to everyone. Anyways, this chapter was pretty easy, and it would have probably been possible without using the Dragon Veins. This chapter also gave us Scarlet as a unit, which definitely made me happy a few chapters later when I found her true power. Chapter 14, Light Scatters. This chapter has nothing noteworthy since it's a simple defeat the boss stage and the boss is not too strong. She does have this skill that deals damage to our units when we're 2 spaces away, but it cannot bring us to 0 HP unfortunately. Chapter 15, Wolfskin Peak. This chapter takes us to Mount Garo, where we fight the Wolfskin. None of these units are able to hit us from more than 1 space away, so this battle was not too difficult. But unfortunately for us, Kaze does not make it out alive in this chapter, making him unusable for the remainder of the challenge. Chapter 16, Pleasure Palace. In this chapter we have to rout the enemy. Some of these enemies have fire orbs that can deal damage to you, but if you remove the enemy from the orb, you can use the orb to deal damage. It doesn't really sit right with me calling a map feature an attack, since these fire orbs are quite similar to Dragon Veins. And since these fire orbs affect everyone, the opponent's side could deal enough damage to their own allies if we tricked them into doing so. Which I didn't do because I didn't know that they could deal damage to their own allies until I was writing this script. Anyways, we were able to successfully rout the enemy, and 13,000 gold from this one archer that wouldn't attack until they took damage. Which is pretty weird because I would have never have thought that the AI in the enemy could become so intelligent that it wouldn't attack the team that couldn't attack. This could prove to be a challenge in future chapters. Chapter 17, Lost in the Ice. We were taken to the Ice Tribe for this chapter, and I visited every house to get the gifts that they would always offer us. But this time, they gifted us assassins. Great! The boss of this chapter, Flora, was also stubborn and just would not die. They kept healing in this one spot over and over again until I got lucky enough to get the Dragon Fang, which deals 50% more damage for an attack. Chapter 18, Leo. In this chapter, we were taken to the Woods of the Forlorn, where we had to fight these faceless enemies once again. And of course, they still can't hit from more than 1 tile away, making this an easy victory. Chapter 19, Rainbow Sage. This chapter takes place at the Sevenfold Sanctuary, and we're met with so many healers, and only 2 of these are only allowed to heal and cannot attack. This means that we'll have to use lunge 2 more times, making a total of 6 lunges so far. The rest of the chapter was pretty easy, but I kind of don't like this map. I just wanted to get that out there that I hate this map. Chapter 20, Fort Dragonfall. Nothing really needs to be said about this chapter other than it's just super easy since it's only faceless enemies that we're facing against. Chapter 21, Burning Falls. We're taken to Demon Falls for this chapter, and during this battle we meet enemies that have the Stoneborn class. These guys can move 4 spaces, but they're also able to attack from 5 spaces away. This will be a huge challenge to overcome because they can just run away from us and then attack from super far away. But I have a plan. What if we surrounded these guys so they would only be able to attack in our range? And it worked. Now all that's left to do is make a path to the end with these Dragon Veins, and trap the other Stoneborn to defeat them. When we reach the top of the map, the floor becomes really hot and we'll start taking damage every single turn. On top of that, more enemies start spawning out of nowhere. In the end, we were able to take out the boss, but most of our units were taken out since this battle was pretty difficult without attacking. Chapter 22, Hidden Capital. Okay, this chapter is a little weird. This chapter takes place in Windmire, and we had to battle against Shura, who has a bow that can only shoot from 3 spaces away. Lucky for us, I bought a Spy's Shuriken from the shop, thinking it was going to be useful because it was an A-ranked weapon. But little did I know, it was one of the only weapons that can hit from 3 spaces away, making it the perfect weapon to fight against Shura with. The only problem here was the fact that Saizo had a B-rank Shuriken proficiency, so I had to use an arm scroll mid-battle so Saizo could actually hold this weapon. We also had to do this awkward battle formation so Saizo would be the only possible unit that could be hit by Shura. After we defeated Shura, I thought the rest of the battle would be pretty easy, but instead, I think I might have broken the AI of the enemy units. Because when they got to low health, they started to hoard around this one spot of land for some reason. I don't know why this happens, but it's truly a sight to see. They don't attack, they don't even move, they just kind of sit there and wait for something to happen, I guess. I thought about it for a while until I thought of something insane. What if I healed the opponent? Now, you might be thinking, hey Ansel G, you can't do that. And to that I say, under most circumstances, no. But this time, we have Dragon Veins on our side to create the map effect that'll heal everyone in a certain radius to full health, including enemy units. This causes them to start moving again, so I decided to put Ryoma in the front lines since he was the strongest unit we had, and could clearly one-shot everyone that would walk to him. Chapter 23, Camilla. Before going into this chapter, I decided to try out the paralogs so we can get some beefy units on our side. And these paralogs were near impossible without attacking. I would have failed these if Ryoma wasn't so insane at the game. Anyways, this chapter isn't too difficult, but the only real problem I had was when Camilla kept using these Dragon Veins to deal damage to Bingle & Co. Chapter 24, Tears of a Dragon. This chapter was insanely difficult. My units kept falling one by one. Even Bingle didn't survive the battle. But you know who came out without a scratch? Yup, it's Ryoma. He defeated Hands, and we were able to move on to this chapter. Also, I feel like nobody would have their final words as, "You killed me!" followed by an angry grunt. Chapter 25, Traitor Revealed. This chapter was pretty difficult, but nothing really noteworthy. We managed to defeat Yago and his Ganunga Gap, and I'd say that he was probably the easiest opponent in the entire chapter. Chapter 26, Xander. This chapter begins in this tiny room with only Bingle and Xander. Our goal is to defeat the boss, which is, of course, Xander. But if you go near him, he won't attack you. Why is this happening? I don't know. But he'll not move a muscle. I tried to put more of our units into the room to maybe help push him a little bit, but nothing really worked. I even tried to lunge with Scarlet, but for some reason, I was not able to. I think it's a good time to say this now, but Lunge is a skill that has some exceptions for how it can be used. Lunge cannot be used if the unit is on an invalid space, so a flyer cannot swap with someone on the ground when they're flying in the air. Lunge can also not be used when the opponent can't move. This is normal with bosses when they show a hyphen in their walk stats, but it clearly shows that Xander can indeed move. He just kinda doesn't wanna. But when we got attacked by Laszlo, he decided, oh okay, well now I'm going to attack. And he started attacking us. He also says to stay out of his way because this was between Bingle and him, but like, she's kind of right next to him, so why would he not go straight for Bingle? Anyways, this chapter was scary, but it turned out to be alright in the end since Xander chose to start attacking us when there was like 10 people surrounding him. Chapter 27, King Garen. All of these battles that we've faced today have led up to this one moment. The final battle begins now. Before this chapter begins, Bingle's Yato upgrades to the Blazing Yato. With this, we'll be able to have a fighting chance against King Garen. I quickly realized that we were very underleveled for this battle, since Asugi and Sophie were downed on round 1. We kept pushing through, even though all the enemy units were blocking our path to Garen. When we finally were able to push through, we kept getting attacked from the back, so we had to make a barricade ourselves so we can single out Garen. I decided to put Ryoma in the front since he was the strongest on our team, but he was getting bested by Garen. And on top of that, he kept getting healed by this maid beside him. So my goal was to hit Garen enough so he could exhaust all the healing items the maid was using, so I sent Bingle to the front so she can get some damage on Garen and use the millions of healing potions we had so we can come out alive. And this strategy worked. I was able to get the only healer in the map to run out of healing. So now it was just a matter of who can deal more damage. But literally right after he couldn't be healed, something I feared happened. He got healed by the tile that he was standing on, and on top of that, he didn't even attack us. But remember in chapter 22 when the units wouldn't do anything until they got healed? Well, the same applies to this. So we waited until Garen was comfortable enough to attack us. And the only thing left to do after that was to get really lucky and activate Dragon Fangs so we can deal enough damage to defeat Garen. And this happened.
This ends now!
And with that, King Garen has been defeated. Nah, just kidding. He turns into this giant dragon and literally one-shots Bingle and breaks the Yato. But this isn't the end, because the Yato just spawns into Bingle's hand and she comes back to life. Now it's time for the final battle. And I don't think we're strong enough to win this fight. Garen also refuses to attack us for some reason, so I think we're gonna have to lunge on him while also being able to defeat him in one strike. This is going to need a lot of preparation, so I grinded for hours trying to get my units to be over leveled so we can beat Garen in one shot. I also bought a million tonics from the shop thinking that they would stack. They don't, but now with our overpowered units, we were ready for the final fight. And I was sure that we can win. My first move I knew I needed to do was to give Bingle a hexing rod. This tool brings any unit's health down by 50%. So in this case, I was obviously going to choose to bring Garen's health all the way down to 39. I also used the tonics I brought to upgrade the stats of all the units on the team. My next step was to move upwards with Scarlet and Bingle paired, and protect Jacob with Sophie. We had to be successful with protecting Jacob so we could transfer him over to Bingle so she can get the stat boost. Once we got that down, now it was time to use the hexing rod. So I let Bingle use it, and it missed. I tried again next round, and it hit, thankfully. Now it was time to use lunge one last time. I selected Scarlet and looked at the selection screen with the great club she had. It was kind of risky since using it would only have a 78% hit rate, but it also had a 51% chance to crit. So I took that risk, and this happened.
I'm gonna get Norian on your butt!
This can't be.
That's right, both swings successfully hit, and now we can answer the question, can you beat Fire Emblem Fates without attacking? Well, you could definitely beat it without pressing the attack button, but using lunge is pretty much an attack, so I'm going to say it's possible to not press the attack button, but it's not possible without attacking, since we used lunge 7 times throughout the entire game. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. It took forever to make, and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and yep, that's all I got.